Hi, I'm Nancy Rathbone, and I'm trying to get closer on this video. So here's my face, hi, and everything else you're going to see is just my hands. So this month we're working on our month 2 block of the month. So you'll get your kit, and the kit is going to include the pattern instructions. Now remember, you got your color picture in the first month. So you've got your paper pattern instructions, and then we've got everything folded up and labeled for you on what you're going to be doing with all of this fabric. So I just wanted to show you what was in the kit and that it's all going to be labeled for you. When you follow your cutting instructions, you're going to have 3 pieces here, like you can see. Month 2, these filler fabrics, and we have the labels. So after you cut them, according to your pattern instructions, just stick those labels on there because you'll need those in one of the upcoming months. Now, don't get frightened because your pattern instructions have you cut your background fabrics, and what you're given is you're given a 7 by 13 inch rectangle. And the pattern instructions tell you to cut a 7-inch square. So you don't have any room for error, right? So you might get kind of freaked out. No, they told me a 7-inch square, and all they gave me was 7 inches. But let me show you what you're going to be doing with that fabric. So you're going to take the 7, or about 7, as close to 7 as you can get, of the background squares and the fabrics for the stars too. And they're going to be cut 7 inches a piece. So what you're going to do is you're going to take those sort of 7-inch squares and you're going to put them right sides together. Okay? You're going to have one background and one star color. So you can see that I have all kinds of pairs of these 7-inch squares. And what you're going to place on it is the papers that we've given you. So these are called star singles. Spinning Star Designs created these papers, and they're for making half square triangles. So last month you learned how to make half square triangles with our quick quarter and marking tools, and this time we're going to be doing it a little bit differently. There's a lot more than one way to make a half square triangle. So you've got your fabric, your dark and your light, your star points and your background right sides together, and then you're going to place one of these papers on the square, and you can see you have plenty of fabric all the way around that paper. In fact, this paper tells you to cut your squares 6 inches. But we're just going to leave them 7 because everything's going to be trimmed up in the end. And all I do is I put one pin, I like to use little flower head flat pins, right in the center so that keeps it all together. So I'm going to kind of try to get a little closer so you can see here that everything is marked on these papers, okay? You have all series of numbers, all right? So do you see, I don't know if you can see this. I can't really see it either, but there's a 1 in this corner of this triangle. And if you follow this dashed line by that spot that says 1, this is the start. There's nothing that indicates that that's the start other than this number 1. So what you're going to do is you're going to place that sewing machine needle right here, and you're going to sew on this dotted line till you get to the round dot. And then what you're going to do is you're going to stop with your needle down in that round dot, and then you're going to turn and keep sewing. And the way it works is you sew all the way around this without having to pick up and cut your thread or anything. If you just stop with your needle down in each little spot, then you're going to have a completed sewn block. And I already have one right here. So you can see that this whole thing has been sewn on that dotted line. Starting with number 1, you can kind of see where my little thread tails are. Let me get this real close. Starting with number 1, working to the dot, and then turning and pivoting and going all the way around, and you end up here at the end by spot number 8. Okay? So that's the Spinning Star Designs. So every 7-inch square that you have, they're going to go right sides together, and you're going to sew those half square triangles using that method. So it's kind of fun. You don't have to do any marking. You don't have to be perfect. The next step after you sew on all those dashed lines is to cut on the solid line. Okay? So now I'm going to take my ruler. I just have a little square ruler, which is fine. And I cut on the solid line. I start by cutting all the way around the outside edge. So if I had started with a 6-inch square and nothing had shifted, which we all know how that works. Shift happens, right? So I like to have a little bit extra all the way around. So I'm kind of glad that they had us cut those 7-inch squares, or close to 7 inches, whatever you can get. We're pretty accurate when we cut those kits. So all that excess, all the way around the outside edge, that gets cut off. And now what you have, it looks really nice now. Now you still have solid lines, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to cut on these other solid lines. I start with cutting on these like an X in the middle. So that separates it into rectangles. And then I'm going to cut on to make squares. There we go. So now we've got lots of pieces that look like this. There's still some more solid lines here. And I'm just going to cut in between these two half square triangles. They're starting to look like half square triangles now, right? There we go. So there's my half square triangle. Ta-da! And so now I'm going to cut all these, or not cut, I'm going to tear all the paper off my fabric. And we'll see. I'm going to demonstrate one. See if I can get it off in 2 clean pieces. So what you do is you pinch your little finger right here on the seam, and then you take just the paper, so I'm not pulling the fabric off, take the paper and just pull it off. So you just have 2 pieces of paper, the little seam allowance part, oh well, that came off in a couple pieces. It's hard when you're facing it away from you and up towards the camera. So there's my half square triangle. So last time we had to do a lot of marking. This time we start with a big square. It's really fun. And the pattern instructions have you press this towards the star points, which for me is going to be my light. So I'm going to press towards the light, okay? And I have a whole stack of these. Just take off all my papers and do all my pressing. And I like to work with one color at a time and make one block at a time, because we've got a lot of different lights and darks, and I don't want to have to get them all mixed up. So then you're going to have a nice little garbage pile of papers. I'm going to clean mine up so I can show you. After you've got your half square triangles pressed, so I'll lay these out for you so you can see. The pattern instructions is going to have you sew these into almost like a little flying geese. Okay, so our star points for my block are the light. So I'm just going to position this on my board here so that you can see how this works. Little star points. So you'll have sewn those pairs together. So you can see there's my little star points. They're all facing out, and my background is actually my dark fabric. And then I should have some coordinating fabrics that were already cut into, oh, here they are, these squares. Those go sewn in the corners. So this will be sewn in rows, like my top row will be like this, and then I'll have my bottom row here, and then it's going to have a center square in the middle. And I believe, if I looked at the pattern pictures correctly, oh, here's my square, that's going to be the same color as the star points. So I guess you could do it however you want. You could take another color and put a different color in the center. It would be kind of fun and scrappy. This is your quilt, so you can really do what you want. So you're going to have just a solid square sewn in the center, and these are going to be the sawtooth stars, and you'll make 4 of those. Now there's also going to be 3 fancy stars, so don't let that word fancy get you all scared. It's the same principle. You're still going to be using 7-inch squares of the papers with right sides together. That's not going to change. The only difference is how we're going to make the center. So with the center, we're going to start with our, I believe this is, well, the pattern instructions tell you the sizes. So this is the center square. And then we're going to take our littler squares, and I've already marked these from corner to corner with one of my Friction gel pens. So I'm going to position 2 pieces. You can only sew 2 corners at a time. So 2 of those corners on this square. So you can see here how my lines are oriented. And I'm going to sew either right on the line or just a little bit on the outside of the line. By the outside of the line, I mean towards the outer point, not towards the inside of the block. So maybe 1 thread length, on the outside. So I'm going to sew that. Oh, look, like magic. I already have one sewn right here. So now that I have those 2 pieces sewn, you can see my little flaps here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this. So I'm going to trim, using my ruler, 1/4 of an inch to the outside of my stitching line. So that's been trimmed, and I'll turn around and trim the other side. And this gets pressed. So let me just iron that real quick. So now what we have is a block that looks like this. Okay, so now I'm going to do the next step, which is to place my other 2 same colored squares on each corner. This side and this side looks something like that there. Same thing. I'm going to sew just on the outside of those lines. Oh look, I already have one done. Here it is. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to trim 1/4 of an inch beyond that seam allowance of where my stitching line was. It looks like this. And now I'm going to iron that as well. Ta-da! Fancy center. So this is going to be laid out just like the block I had laid out before. I've only made these colors of the half square triangles. In your block, I'm just going to lay this out so you can see it. But in your block, you want to have the matching fabrics, unless you are going scrappy, and then you can do it however you wish. But same thing. It's going to be a fancy star just because it has the fancy center. So it still looks like our other star did. And then it's going to have our little corner squares. And you're going to coordinate these fabrics how you'd like them for your quilt. Ta-da! So then that would be how a fancy star looks. And you make 3 of those. So I hope you enjoyed making your sawtooth stars and your fancy stars for month 2 of your Cabin by the Lake block of the month. Stay tuned. We're going to have a video every month.